So today's session is about how do we deliver to our organizations a more people-centric enterprise architecture. I know that there are many organizations out there today that are also embracing human-centered design thinking and practices that they're picking up from organizations like IDEO. Quite often us as enterprise architects forget to eat our own dog food and apply all these amazing ways of working to our own way of working. So I'm hoping that today I'm going to be able to share with you just my own experience. And Harry, I used to work for the Emirates Group, so I know exactly who CETA is and the challenges even in the travel industry around delivering human-centric services. So I'm hoping today you'll pick up some of the experience and the spectacular failures I've had along the way, and have learned at the end of the day that enterprise architecture is first and foremost a people business and a people capability, and technology comes after that. So let's start with the first slide, and it describes, what's the problem space for enterprise architecture. We have had a bad rep for quite a while now. Having been chief architect in a number of large organizations, quite often we get accused of being, you're just working in the ivory tower. You have no idea of what reality, and you don't deliver pragmatic solutions. You take too long. So I'm hoping you might recognize some of these personas in this particular slide. In the organization you work with, you might see this happening. You may see other organizations have practice like this happening as well, where the language that we use is often too technical, and the business doesn't get it. So quite often we get accused of, oh, you're just a propeller head. And the business, when they look at us speaking in such technical language, don't really understand or comprehend that we're actually here on the journey with them. And it's for us, therefore, to learn how to simplify that language when we're delivering great outcomes. A friend of mine who used to work with me in Rio Tinto, amazing architect, said when he used to recruit people for his team, he'd always say, on their first day, we don't have any superheroes working on our team. We work very collaboratively together. So before you start working on the team, take your underpants off from the outside and please put them back inside. My pet in Dubai, I got feedback from my customers who said that Christine's team's worse than the Dubai police. So if you've ever been in the Middle East, especially in Dubai, you'll know that the police aren't very well liked, and they're the enforcers. So that gave me a lot to reflect on in terms of what am I actually trying to achieve? Do I want to be the Ministry of No? And how do I change my approach so that I am seen to be collaborating and engaging much more effectively, and people see the benefits of the stuff that my team and I do? And the last card over here is the guru syndrome. Quite often we end up as enterprise architects because we're the top of our game. Seriously, we do know a lot of stuff, but quite often what we haven't really learned the lesson yet about is humility. And to find ways of not standing up on a pedestal and trying to preach to people to demonstrate, how knowledgeable and how absolutely wonderful we are, but to find ways of being able to break that knowledge and experience down and to work with teams and share that knowledge so that we can work together to achieve great outcomes. So what does that mean at the end of the day? What we've got to do is to work out, how do we deliver valuable enterprise architecture services? So some of you who are already playing in the service design space would have come across this very simple framework around desirability, viability, and feasibility. So everything that we do and all the services that we offer our customers need to be viable. There's got to be a sound business case. We can't be doing our work where we become an overhead to the organization. because you'll find very quickly that you get shut down. Feasibility. Now, feasibility really is about, you can't expect your enterprise architecture team to be filled with about 30, 40, 50, 100, 200, unless you're a big bank and can afford it. Feasibility is all about making sure that you have the right knowledge and skill set at the right time in your organization. And when you don't have that, be knowledgeable enough to know when you can tap your network, either internally or externally, and bring those resources in. Because at the end of the day, we need to be offering to our customers services that they desire. And when we can bring all those three aspects together, we're delivering a very valuable enterprise architecture practice. So remember, whilst we might use desirability, viability, and feasibility on our customers' projects, we need to learn how to apply it to ourselves as well. So there's another really nice framework. Again, I'm sure I'll find out when we have our discussions how many people are actually using the value proposition canvas that came out of the Netherlands. Now, this work by Alexander is phenomenal and really simple to use when you learn how to use it effectively. So if you're using it right now on customer projects, I urge you to have a look at it and apply this framework and this model to the services that you offer and the products that you offer your customers. It's a really easy tool to use because it helps you understand what your customers desire by understanding their jobs to be done. So that's what's on the right-hand side of this model. When you know your customers' jobs and then you get deep insights around what are their pains and gains, only then will you be able to design a portfolio of services for your practice to be able to relieve their pain and help them to leverage the gains that they have already. Now, why do we want to do that? We see a lot of organizations still today, even though enterprise architecture as a practice has been around, for the past 15, 20 years, we still see a lot of practice focused on delivering what I'd like to call useful enterprise architecture. It's still very technology focused, and we haven't worked out how to crack that ceiling to become trusted partners of the business. Now, we do this by working with stakeholders and working with people outside of IT. So when I first joined the Emirates Group, my title was Manager IT Enterprise Architecture. Within the first week, I changed it because I said my scope is definitely not just IT. My scope is the whole enterprise, all 52 companies, mind you, and 9 lines of business. And in order for me to be able to help the organization embed enterprise architecture and as a practice and use enterprise architecture to make better informed decisions, we needed to push out into the trusted space and stop doing IT. So I simply changed my title to Manager of Enterprise Architecture. So again, these may sound like a little thing, but it sends a very loud message to say, I'm in the business of understanding my business so that I can now partner with them to improve our performance and work more collaboratively right across the business. So again, how do you move up those layers? Well, it really starts with knowing who enterprise architecture stakeholders are. They're the people in the business. They're the people that you work with every day. And whilst you might be sitting there saying, yeah, I already know that, I already have a stakeholder management workbook. Well, I challenge you, go and pick up your stakeholder management workbook for your practice and tell me whether it's actually completed, whether it's even remotely completed. And having worked on hundreds and hundreds of projects across my career, I can tell you I have never seen a stakeholder management workbook filled out with the information necessary for you to understand your customers well and to understand the pains and the gains as well. So again, one of the things that you could do today is work on knowing who your stakeholders are. Now, why do we want to know this? Well, really important. If some of you have been on the on TOGAF training and are TOGAF certified as well, one of the first things they teach you in stakeholder management is who's a stakeholder and that stakeholders have concerns. Now, these two concepts are probably the most important things that I picked out of TOGAF. And by the way, I used to be a TOGAF trainer as well, so I kind of hope I know what I'm talking about. The reason why we need to know our stakeholders well is because they have concerns, and the concerns are related to the role that they perform in the organization. This is the thing that they are here to do every day. So if you go back and have a look at the value proposition canvas, you'll see that when we understand people's roles and stakeholders' roles, we're then getting a better understanding of what are their jobs to be done, not what their issues are. Concerns are not issues. Concerns are related to the role these stakeholders perform in the organization. So you'll very quickly find, because you're an enterprise architect and you're really good at pattern recognition, is that some of these concerns are actually are common with other stakeholders in the organization as well. And what that tells us is that we can now very rapidly find these patterns, discover them, and address them through delivering valuable enterprise architecture services. So we're back to the value proposition canvas again. So again, in order for you to engage your customers and to partner with them, because remember, our goal is to move out of delivering useful architecture to delivering trusted and in partnership with the business architecture. So again, if you know your customers' jobs, and by the way, there are plenty of frameworks out there that can help you understand your customer and help you profile them. There's also a framework that's actually called Jobs to be Done. So if you haven't come across it, go and have a look at it, because there's heaps of free knowledge available. Just Google it in terms of how you start capturing this information. If you haven't created persona profiles for your customers yet, then I urge you to start using persona profiles to help inform your products and services. Because again, remember that the best enterprise architecture that we do is going to be the architecture that solves business problems. We're not here to offer solutions to the business. We're here to help solve problems with them. So here are some typical enterprise architecture services. Feel free to grab this list. This is what I would typically see as being part of an enterprise architecture service catalog. So again, each and every one of these services will have an element of customer in it. And therefore, your challenge today and for you to take back is, how do I put the customer at the center of everything I do? How do I bake it into my roadmaps and blueprints and prototypes? How can I get my customers to come along and help create the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional prototypes with me? How can I get a seat at the table of when my customer creates their strategic plan? How do I get a seat at that table when planning is done? And so on and so forth. Another challenge for you is to have a look at your processes within your enterprise architecture practice as well. Now, for some of you who may be familiar with BPMN as a process modeling language, quite often we will model the customer as a pool in their own right. And then us, being the enterprise architecture practice, have another little pool to describe the interactions that happen between the two. So in customer land, I refer to that as front stage, and all the service design people call that front stage as well. And what happens inside the organization, so inside your enterprise architecture practice, happens in the backstage. Now, the most important thing for you to recognize is all these interactions happening between your customer and yourself are where your moments that matter appear. every time there's a little arrow going from one pool to the other is an opportunity for you to either delight your customer with your service or lose your customer. So again, if you want to focus on how can I deliver that wow to my customer, find these moments that matter and put your energy into creating delight and wowing your customer at every interaction. If you have an enterprise architecture charter, now I know a few of you might have gone and got your TOGAF certification. On the Open Groups website is a really nifty accelerator template which allows you to quick start your architecture practice by writing a charter. Now, that charter, unfortunately, is not human-centric enough for me because it's very technical and it covers most of the things on the left-hand side of this model. What's your vision? Why is architecture important? Who's in the team? And what happens if you don't do it in terms of a risk management plan? But what I urge you to do is to have a look at the right-hand side of the model. So whilst the charter talks about stakeholders and customers of enterprise architecture, going down deeper and using a value proposition canvas is really going to help you get closer to your customers and really understanding your stakeholders' key interests. When you enter in your service catalog, don't make it just about a list of products and services. Make it a list about what's in it for your customer to receive the service. Because if they can't see the value in it, they're not going to be engaging. And to be honest, if you put in stuff like we do governance reviews, it's going to kill that relationship off before you've even started. One key aspect that I find that is missing in a lot of enterprise architecture charters is the engagement model. Our customers don't know how to find us. They think we're from IT. Mind you, we quite often do live in IT, but that's not the point. Every time I've led an architecture practice or I've been in an architecture team, I continuously have conversations with people about I'm part of the business. And I am here to partner with you to help you deliver great business outcomes. So if people don't know where your front door is, how are they going to find you? And how are they going to be beneficiaries of your services? And the last point, measuring success. One of the lessons I learned a very hard way is that I believed that my work should be able to speak for itself. I don't need to go tell people how wonderful I am. My work should be the platform that sells the value I bring to the organization. Well, that didn't work out really well because what I found is that a lot of uneducated and illiterate people were making assumptions about my success and my team's success. And when I started getting feedback around projects are delayed, enterprise architecture delivers no value, projects cost so much more because of the overhead of enterprise architecture, I decided that I needed a way to sell success. And that starts with being able to measure the products and services and how they are used and have service level agreements in place with all my customers so that they knew if something lands on my table, here's when you're going to get a response and an outcome and why the response and outcome is the way it is. And again, it's really important to report those SLAs so people don't think you're sitting in an ivory tower, nobody knows what you're doing. You know, be vocal and publish your success and your metrics. Over to the last slide. What's your problem and challenge today? Again, if you're struggling in your practice to show how your team delivers value, if people aren't involving you and bypassing your team and your and not receiving the services that you are meant to be delivering, then the challenge for you really is how might I deliver valuable services to customers of enterprise architecture? So again, whilst we're going to have a discussion about this now, what I also challenge you to do is take this back to your teams and have a discussion with them in terms of who values the services you deliver today, and how can you up the notch to deliver a wow so that people can't do without you. I think it is better to become a victim of success where you have so much demand coming down the pipeline because you're delivering valuable services. That's an easy problem to solve. The more difficult problem to solve is when nobody wants to knock on your door and even speak to you. So on that note, over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Christine. That was absolutely fantastic. So before we sort of start, what I want to actually sort of do is very, very quickly intro Dan to everyone. So Dan has joined as our director of sort of consulting. Some of you may have recognised him from sort of previous roundtables where he actually sort of came as a sort of chief architect, sort of attendee, but he's now been sort of with sort of Konvergent for a month or two now. I just wanted to just say get Dan to sort of introduce himself to everyone, and also maybe sort of give his point of view on what's just been said before we open things for discussion.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks ever so much, Christine. Really stimulating to hear you talk about that live. I know we've gone through the deck a few times to practice, but hearing it all strung together is fantastic. Really, really, really interesting. Couple of topics I want to go into, but just to Ben's point, very quickly to introduce myself. My name is Dan Pring. Recently joined Konvergent as Director of Consulting. Immediately prior to that, I was Chief Architect for the RFU, the governing body of rugby, and the organisation that runs Twickenham Stadium and the England rugby teams, the professional England rugby teams, men and women, all and age groups and sevens. Which is obviously a really fascinating job, really, really diverse. I was tempted back into consulting by Ben and Jez with a really exciting opportunity to see Konvergent through its next chapter. Prior to working at the RFU, I was a career consultant working for the likes of EY, KPMG, and in between those some boutiques as well. So yeah, really excited to be joining Konvergent at this really sort of interesting time in its life, and great to be taking part in roundtables that I've been attending for a while, on sort of the other side of the well, if a roundtable has sides, on the other side of the roundtable as an employee of Konvergent. So good to be here, good to be with you all. Nice to see some familiar faces, not just from roundtables, but with whom I've worked over the years as well.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Dan.